We do not have sufficient power at the plant for SXM, for St. Martin, and yet when the manager screams, he is ignored. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement? The IT department is in complete chaos. Someone under an external consulting company has been brought in as the manager of the department on a consultancy basis. He is rarely here and never answers emails when workers have issues. He does not sit where his workers are, but he sits in management building. He is very arrogant and looks down at the workers. Is that a correct statement? Management oftentimes looks down at the GB workers and complains about them, yet the consultancy team from India makes a lot of mistakes and they are very much respected. Is that correct? Human Resources Department is in shambles. Too much favoritism and judgment of persons. Is that correct? The Customers Department still can't get everything under control. They have consultants there already for a year and still can't get it done. How ironic, they ran who was there after 6 months, yet this management is there going on 2 years and still can't get it done. The fuel clause is not at all times issued based on what it should be to the customers. Isn't this mismanagement? My question is the statement correct? The finance department gets away with murder. Oftentimes the manager is in disagreement with the director, who suffers, of course, only the company. Is the statement correct? And it's as if BDO is running, external consulting company is running the company. They are in every facet of the company, of GEBE. However, everyone knows that the director from both companies are best friends. Is this correct? And then lastly, why is it that a specific construction company is the one that gets most of the work from GB? You have a different person than the director approving, but here is not where the problem lies. It lies in who issues the work. Is this statement correct? And I take note of the fact that perhaps not all answers can come publicly. I will take the answers privately as well, if that is allowed, because what this tells me when I'm getting questions like this, and in the years that I have been in this position as a member of parliament, I hardly have ever asked questions that I didn't really properly vet. But what this has given me a preview into is the fact that you still have a little bit of discourse, uncertainty, chaos happening internally within the company if you don't really have proper leadership and proper communication and basically just proper cooperation across all lines. If you have a company that feels that everyone else outside of the company is doing the work, so that is external consultants, whoever it is you hire to do anything across the board, whether it's finance, whether it's IT, whether it's working at the power plant as an external company like the one Wärtsilä that we all know of, fuel supplier. I'm talking across the board because, again, my questions come from a business perspective, from a financial perspective. A big part of the success of a company happens when people are happy, when the workers are happy, when the workers feel appreciated, when the workers have the resources they need to get the work done. So my concern here now, getting all these questions, which is not a secret to any of us, they're coming from internal, is how are you handling all of this chaos happening internally? Because to me, this is a little bit foreshadowing of what is happening with a telecommunication company like Telem, and I don't want to be in the same position there where we have to have a closed-door meeting because certain drastic decisions have to be taken because of bad decision-making internally to manage a company. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
And that's mostly regarding cost-cutting because there's still a very worrying picture that has been painted for me. So I'm asking, much to piggyback off of what MP De Wever said, so that we do not end up in another scenario as is currently occurring right across the road. What measures is GB actually putting into place to protect against that? And secondly, in terms of carrying capacity, I know that the feasibility study for renewable energy and such is being done, but as the public will have noted, I've asked some questions regarding very large-scale commercial developments that are all scheduled to come online within the next year and a half, and I just want to know from a carrying capacity perspective, is GB in a position to be able to handle that load, as well as the existing load, and will we see load shedding happening as the hotter months start to come upon us? Thank you, Madam Chair.
The one that I heard, MP, Future Outlook, who asked that question? You? The one related to, I know the one related to the fuel clause, I attempted to respond to a few minutes ago in the sense that the fuel clause is tied to the throughput fee that GEBE pays to the harbor. And the harbor, so they contacted government, GEBE, to see what we could do about it, since the harbor is also a government-owned company, in relation to the reduction of that or elimination of that. And the harbor reiterated that they were not able to reduce that based on the fact that it was part of their financing agreement to be able to afford their loans. So basically, the expansion of the harbor, the port, and the bridge has created that constant need to service the loans, which is being passed on via the throughput fee. So this is something that I believe has to be, and I just learned this towards the end of last year. And so this is something that I believe we need to just reassess in whether we need to reevaluate their loans. They also have other expansions they want to do, but at the moment it's tied up in those same throughput fees. So if we remove the throughput fees that GB has to pay, which is passed on to the consumer, then that means then the harbor can't afford their loans. So we have to figure out, as government and its entities, the best way to alleviate the stress on the people of St. Martin. I don't know if it was foreseen back then when those expansions took place, how it would negatively impact every individual with having to pay for those throughput fees for fuel. And as it relates to the layoffs, again, that's not the intention, and getting the company back on its feet is happening. So therefore, in transitioning, as I mentioned before, to renewable energies, the company's goal is to ensure that the persons hired will be trained to take up the new functions that would arise if you move away from fossil fuels. Yes, I think, Madam Chair, the rest would require not me to just ad lib off the top of my head, but to actually get that information from NVGEB and the management teams. So I would like to request that more time is given for that.
For all of life's twists, turns, and defining moments, RBC is a blend for all of you. SXM, your social and health insurance is SXM, your social and health insurance is.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah, your social and health insurance is.
Because it was a direct shot, finally, that was sent to the Minister of Vromi and Tiat regarding the overdevelopment of the coastline to the detriment of the ecosystem and environment in general. And I know every time you bring this up, oh, you were there for 20 years, what you do? I can't do nothing, I give an advice. And the minister in whose party I am, Christopher Emmanuel, left there 6 years ago in January. Since then, a huge amount of rebuilding and new buildings have started. And you have to ask yourself the question, and I'll explain you why I'm going to say this. If the ministers truly care about such, that the ecosystems and the environment in general are being destroyed. When you look at what's happening in the hills, when you look at what's happening on the beach, when you see what's happening around the ponds, it begs to question, are we talking to people in the know about the ecosystem and the environment? Are we talking to the EPIC Foundation? Are we talking to the ones that we even have appointed to do this, the Nature Foundation? The answer is no. And naturally, they'll come with all kind of little Nancy stories just now to tell you, no, we ask them advice, and they tell us this, and they tell us that, and they tell us that. I am not going to make my hands dirty on that piece because I know better. I know how it works. When you see St. Martin Pride, EPIC, come out and start to talk and start to warn people of what's going to happen, you have to ask yourself the question, government, what is our position on buying land from third parties to safeguard our ecosystem? Because you can say, oh, I'm not going to give them a permit, I'm going to zone it green. You can't just zone private property green without compensating the owners. They will take you to courts. I mean, it is ludicrous that everybody build up all over the place, and then somebody has a piece of land by the beachfront, and they go, oh, you can't build because you're too late, all the others built already. He will go to the judge, and the judge will say, look, I understand all the safeguarding, but you're going to pay for it. You have to pay to keep it green. Other than that, you have to give people their permits because they have a right to their permits. This is the problem. This is the problem. And while they can't touch the pond, they're going to build around the pond, you're going to lose the beauty of the pond. You won't see the pond no more. You won't see the mangroves no more. Because that's their property now. And this is what, for me, is very important. We are excavating hillsides to build condominiums. The problem is, not one of those condominiums is truly owned by locals. Foreigners come here, they invest in their condominiums, the money goes abroad, it never stays here. It never stays here. If we like it or not. Those are the harsh realities. And when this happens, I don't blame the investor, you know. I don't blame the contractor. I don't blame the real estate. I blame the damn government who allows it to continuously happen. That's the problem. We are not looking out for what's really happening. So when you hear an MP come out now and starts to make noise, I smile because I don't see nothing going to happen. They're going to build right by Belier. They're going to build. Because the government said they don't have no money to buy the land and protect it. Yet they took a loan for 60-something million, of which they put 40 million in the pot by Vromi. No, Vromi is the one that buys land, so maybe Vromi should go talk to the people. Because, you know, there was a chap tell me on Facebook, well, how come we didn't build roads for 10 years? We didn't build them because there was no money. Since 2014, there were no capital injections given to government. But you there, so you can see, you know the story better than me. So, you know, you gotta be careful when you ask those type of questions publicly, you know, because they're gonna answer you. But maybe that money, some of that money should be taken to start protecting some of these areas. Because that land is not worth 100 million. You pay market value. Because maybe you should then think on taking the land from them. and stating it must be green to ensure that the catch basin for water is safeguarded and guaranteed, and the ecosystem cannot be destroyed. It means when you go to disappropriate the land, you have PIFRIT. You end up in courts. So make an offer. Make an offer as government. Start with that. Instead of just sitting down telling us, oh, look at the problems. No, make an offer. Parliament can do so. Parliament can make a motion and ask them to do something.
Local democracy is flourishing in Saint Martin with the long-awaited installation of the neighborhood councils, which took place on March 5th and 6th. A significant step towards participatory and inclusive governance within our collectivity. This upcoming Tuesday, March 12th, marks an important milestone in this process with the official presentation of the new neighborhood councils, which will be held at 6 p.m. at the Chamber of Commerce in Concordia.
Yes, just to say a little, last night we put 3 community councils in place, which was French Quarter, Grand Cars, and Colombier. And now this evening we will be putting Sandy Ground, Marigot, and Concordia in place. I think it was long awaited by the people, and we was also long awaiting to get it done. So here it is that it is done, and I think that each quartier was waiting on that, and we will have a lot of work that is coming our way because each quartier is trying to make themselves better. And I think last night there was a lot of questions asked by Colombier. I guess all other quartiers will be asking questions too, so we have to prepare ourselves to be able to answer them and be concrete and follow up what they are asking, can be done from what can be done one time, because certain things can be done immediately and certain things will take time. You have to plan to get it done also.
And what about the 12th?
And yes, on the 12th we'll have a grand ceremony at the CCSM where the 6 conseils de quartier will be honoré, will be taken into account, and the ceremony will be on the 12th for each and every one of them, and the general public is invited.
The National Agency for Urban Renovation, ANRU, in collaboration with Cabinet Agis, will carry out a diagnosis of the Sandy Ground and French Quarter districts in Saint Martin. This initiative will be carried out from March 12th to 22nd, 2024, and aims to assess the current state of neighborhoods and to consider new urban developments in line with the need of residents. The Collectivité of Saint Martin, wishing to take control of the redevelopment of the territory, aims to initiate an urban renewal project for these neighborhoods. This approach is part of the objective of revitalizing the environment, innovating and promoting resilience while encouraging citizens' participation. The overall project that will emerge from this initiative will align with the territorial plan of Saint Martin. The collectivity invites residents to welcome the ANRU technicians during this period of diagnosis and discussion.
SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah. Your social health insurances. For all of life's twists, turns, and defining moments, RBC is open for all of you.
The capacity to recognize that reparatory justice is a conversation that must take place. The ability to allow Europe, through the Chancellor, to admit that the production model that saw the extraction of commodities without value being left in these countries needs to come to an end, bringing to an end 4 centuries of an exploitative model that has literally decimated the region and the people of the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. It is fair to say that anyone who doubted how you did it would have had a reminder today in your speech as to why the spirit of St. Vincent and the spirit of the Caribbean continues to remain indomitable, and that we as a region, not just my own country that asserted this in its first address to the UN in 1966, but that we shall be friends of all and satellites of none. You have brought pride to the people of the Caribbean civilization. I have every confidence that our sister in Honduras and our brother in Colombia shall continue in the same vein, because as we were reminded today, our region has worked hard to remain a zone of peace, and that we were able, even in the midst of great struggle and difficulty, to have our brothers in Guyana and Venezuela come to St. Vincent to reach that conclusion, even if in a mutual state of dissatisfaction. They have asserted the value of peace and life. I speak to you, therefore, against this background, and will try to do so very quickly, because this is a world that continues to be challenged by existential crises, but people want to distract us with geopolitics and national politics. This is a world in which the battles for climate justice and finance, even though making some progress, are not making sufficient progress with sufficient speed. And I hear and want to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, whose voice has remained unwavering and resolute in providing us with a moral compass, calling for a new social contract and calling for fairness among the world's countries, such that when Antigua hosts the 4th Summit of Small Island Developing States, 30 years after the Barbados Program of Action, which was the first Small Island Developing States Summit, that we believe that even if we are not seeing full success, we are building momentum in being able to reverse centuries of undermining of the voice of small states and indeed of exploited people. The issue of climate justice and climate financing, as we have expressed not just in the Bridgetown Initiative, but in all of the other things that we have done, is fundamentally about how can we mitigate how can we address damage and how can we adapt. In terms of mitigation, quite simply, we know that methane will cause much greater damage than even carbon dioxide. Let us not rely on voluntarism. Let us get a global agreement on methane in order to give ourselves the best chance of staying below 1.5 to stay alive. Secondly, with respect to loss and damage, we are grateful for the fact that we've acknowledged and created a fund, or is about to create a fund, because Europe has to agree finally to the appointment of its directors and is holding it up. But even when we create it, and even though we've had $700 million in pledges, the reality is that we don't want to rely on loss and damage. We want to avert loss. And therefore, the real battle remains in climate finance, the capitalization of the funds and the budgets to do adaptation. It is against that backdrop, therefore, that we continue to ask for a few things. One, that IDA 21 has to be a real game changer, but it ought to be accompanied by another Jubilee moment for the cancellation of debt of the IDA countries of the world. Two, that we need to ensure that middle-income countries have access to lower-cost debt and longer-term debt. We cannot finance schools, adaptation, or hospitals with 15-year debt. We need 30, 40-year debt at the very minimum, and Europe found a way to accommodate both the United Kingdom as well as Germany in the last century to recognize that they both need both long-term debt and to cap the cost of debt service to a percentage of exports in order to be able to allow Germany to recover after World War II. Three, that we need to address urgently, and I hope that in Bridgetown 3.0 we can put this forward, the real issue of insurance and the lack of insurance becoming the cause of the implosion of the financial system that we have to support mortgages and to support expansion of businesses through access to finance. If people cannot get access to insurance, the whole financial system as we know it will start to implode, because that is the basis upon which most borrowing and lending takes place in our world.